Hello everybody and welcome to the Money Shift YouTube channel. I am Thanasi and this is an SW20 Toyota MR2. This just isn't any MR2, however, this one actually has a 2GR V6 engine, and that engine is from none other than a 2015 Toyota Sienna. Yes, that's right, a minivan. Add to that some revised suspension geometry, some updated polyurethane bushings, and some RPF1s, a tremendous BMW green, and a lip kit, and you have the makings for a gorgeous machine. This SW20 has really aged tremendously. This car gets confused with NSXs, Lambos, Ferraris. It looks the part, and now sounds the part. But let's make our way to the inside where we're met with these BRZ seats, and they are incredibly comfortable and a really nice place to be as you grip this notchy shifter. It is very notchy, very mechanical, very awesome. Combine that with a double din and some T-tops, and you have a place that you want to spend a lot of time in. I mean, this thing could easily take a long road trip, no problem. But let's give it a sound. Yep. Right, we are in the backroads portion in the 2GR MR2. Listen to that. Holy Toledo, guys. This sound, I wish everyone could hear this car in person because holy cow, does it sound amazing. And to think this is the engine out of a 2015 Toyota Sienna. This is a minivan engine. A minivan! It just sounds so good, which in this backroads portion is really key. As we weave through these central Massachusetts roads, we're shrouded by trees, and the sound of the machine really bellows off the tree wall. And if the car doesn't sound good, it really dampers from the whole experience pretty dramatically. So in the backroads portion, we like to focus on a couple things. We like to talk about the steering, we like to talk about the transmission, and we like to talk about the braking, because those are really the important things that you feel when it comes to the backroads. So how's this steering? The steering is largely really good. It just suffers in one area, and that is low speed. So if you have a hairpin or a slower turn on a back road, the steering gets spongy, and the reason why that is because this car actually has a power-assisted rack, but it's partial, and the partial is at low speed. And when you get, I don't know, call it sub 20 or even sub 30, the steering just gets very easy, and it's admittedly very spongy. It's not good. Feels like kind of like a video game. But the moment you get above that, the rack stops being power assisted and it feels great. So on track, you would be just fine. But when you're in a back road section where there's some tighter, lower speed corners, you'll feel that in the steering. There's no bones about it. How are these brakes? Well, John's about to move to Florida, and this car's seen a lot of track time and autocross time in the last couple of days, weeks, whatever. And with that comes a very, very worn brake pad. This car is due for a big brake upgrade, and it is going to be getting one. But what that means for us right now is there's very low confidence in this brake pedal, and it feels incredibly spongy. It is what it is. I mean, this car is seeing a brake upgrade, so I'm sure it'll be fixed come that time. But in this current moment, the brakes are just eh. So how about this transmission? How does this transmission do in the backroad section? Well, leaving from this light is one of the problems, and that's this clutch. John loves it because it's incredibly heavy, and with that comes an on-off feel that when you're on track is really, really great, right? It's super rewarding to use. It's very easy to row through these gears quickly. But what is hard is leaving from a light, leaving from a stop sign, and things like that. We'll talk about it more in the around town portion, but you do run into some stop signs in the back road, so it's something to be said. But when you're heel toe shifting or anything like that, it is really easy to use. And while it is heavy, Emphasis on heavy. This is a very heavy clutch. I would say second only to the 996 that we test drove earlier this year. It's fine. It's great. How's the shifter itself? Very mechanical, very direct. If I downshift right now, I didn't have to look, as you shouldn't, quite frankly, but I was searching a lot in the last review. It's very direct, very notchy, but it's easy. The throws are fine. This isn't like a early 2000s Viper where I'm putting some freaking gusto into that gear change. You have to use a little force, but it's definitely precise and easy. It doesn't slot in like a new car, but it's not heavy throw like an older car either. So overall, this car is a blast on the backroads portion. Short of that power assisted steering and the clutch at a light, the car's overall dynamite. But as we viewed in the past, cars that are really good on backroads sometimes can falter on the highway. If you're too focused in one thing, other things can suffer. So how does this MR2 do on the highway? Let's find out. All right. You know the drill. When we have cars that sound really, really good, we include the on-ramp portion to the highway. So, let's include the on-ramp portion. So we're about to hit a right turn, and then it is a straight bomb onto the highway. I'm gonna toss this car into third. This is a bit of a steep turn, but there's no power assist here, so it's good. Let's give it the beans. Whew, that's a sound. So, how does the 2GR MR2 do on the highway? Well, let me put up the window here, and we'll talk about the first fault with the car that, again, is also being remedied. This car does not have air conditioning. And I know what you guys are saying, like, oh, race car, whatever, and I get it. I get it, but I like a little AC. Good news is John is working on that, and this car should have AC very soon. But because of that, if you guys see big beads of sweat on my 280-pound face, let me know in the comments. But on the highway, how does the 2GR MR2 do? Guys, because this engine has immense amounts of power and torque, we're spinning at 2,500, going 60 miles an hour, and if I step it up, if we go 70, we're at 3,000 RPM. And the suspension, the way it's set up right now, this car's incredibly comfortable at speed. You could probably cruise easy 75, 80 miles an hour, and because of that, it is a good highway machine. Yeah, I could take this thing on road trips no problem once John puts the AC in here. It's got a double DIN here, so you could easily put Apple CarPlay if you valued it. But overall, this thing on the highway is pretty solid. It's incredibly comfortable, and you still get a tinge of that really good sound. All right, as we get up to speed on this around the town portion, let's do a quick highway recap. It was a little shorter than usual, which is okay. It's 4:50 here in Boston, so traffic is pretty heavy, so we only went one exit. But overall, this car is incredibly smooth. On the highway, the aerodynamic shape means the car is relatively planted, which is awesome. You still get a tinge of that sound, but not a lot of drone. Awesome. While this car doesn't have AC at this very moment, it's getting it, so it'll be fine. And thanks to the addition of this double DIN, you can have Apple CarPlay, which you guys know. If a car's got Apple CarPlay, I don't care about anything else, especially a car from the 90s like this. It makes it perfect. So how does this car do around town? How does it do, you know, putting around at average speeds? I'm pleased to report there's only one issue. And it's that damn clutch we talked about in the backroads portion. While the clutch is really great for aggressive driving and it can take the beating that you throw at it, what it's not great at is stop and go traffic and being at a stoplight or anywhere where you have to launch the car because of its on-off nature and its weight more so than anything. The on-off nature you can sort of get used to, but the weight is really, really heavy. So if you're stuck in some sort of traffic, you're gonna feel that in your left leg, your ACL, your BCL, TCL, whatever CL there is, I don't even know, I just know ACL. It's gonna hurt. You guys are gonna feel that in the morning. But the suspension is really, really nice. We're going over some bumps here, some average cracks, things that you wouldn't, or things that you would see on normal roads, and the suspension soaks it up just fine. And thanks to these BRZ seats, it's incredibly comfortable as well. I think if this car had a lighter clutch, this could be an only car, no problem. No problem. Often we talk about on highway sections where cars from the 90s don't tend to cruise well at modern day speeds. This thing doesn't have that problem. Add to that a doubled-in stereo that could easily be fitted with Apple CarPlay, you lose that problem. So the only thing that doesn't make this car modern is the instrument cluster, things like that. But otherwise, this car is great around town. This is a ton of fun. Yeah, maybe you could use the workout in the left leg anyway. God knows we've been stuck inside long enough for quarantine. The left leg workout, it'll do. So should you buy one of these? Should you get an SW20 with the intention of 2GR swapping it? Is this a car you should consider? Let's talk about it. Okay. If you guys have stuck around this long, thank you so much for listening. This car is really, really special, and I wanted to talk to you guys about, should you consider buying one of these cars? And what are the things you should keep in mind if you wanted to 2GR swap an SW20 MR2, or just motor swapping in general? The first thing is, cars like this, many other cars with an LS swap, but we'll focus on this because this is what we're driving, they have a wide variety of knowledge in terms of people that have done it. A lot of the things on the 2GR, SW20 forums, you know, like, they're incredibly helpful. And if there's any problem, that's likely been solved already, and that's super great. But the thing that you got to remember is cost. I know what you're thinking. Thanasi, I look up 2GRs online. They're whatever, let's call it $1,000. I'm not sure what they are. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen. Or Thanasi, you know, you can get an SW20 these days for only 5-6 grand, whatever. So overall, I'm into the car for 6 grand, 7 grand, right? Wrong. There are so many more things that go into a motor swapped car that need to be considered, especially if you're not doing the labor yourself. You need to pay for the mounts. You need to pay for a different transmission, potentially. You need to pay for different ECUs, different wiring harnesses. Never mind the labor. Never mind if you have to remove or reroute any sort of AC or anything like that to retain the stock stuff. There is just a lot of incremental add-ons that go with motor swapping a car, and I don't mean to dissuade you from doing it. I think something like this is the perfect way to modernize a chassis from the 90s. But if you're going to be doing this, do not overlook the cost, because these can get out of hand pretty quickly. You're talking about, if you found an SW20 for 5 grand, you're likely going to be into this thing, all in all, including the purchase price of the car, 15-20 grand by the time you're done with it. Now, is it worth it? Sure. I think this, like I just mentioned before, that the 2GR does a really good job at modernizing the ethos of the SW20. It's an exotic body style that now has an exotic motor with gobs of torque in a really lightweight car, which make it incredibly fun to drive. I mean, we forget that the Lotus Evora has a 2GR in it, okay? That's this engine. This car is effectively a 90s Evora. I mean, obviously it's missing a couple things, but it's mid-engine and it has a 2GR, just like an Evora. So while you might be able to find a faster car for 20K, 15, 20K, call it 15, you might not find a car with this personality, with this sound, with this individualness. Like, if you go to a track day with a 2GR MR2, you're gonna be the only guy there, and that's really, really neat. So what are some other cars you could buy in this price range that would compete? You got the S2000, but that doesn't have as exotic of a sound as this. It has a great sound, but it doesn't have as good of a sound as this. And this has more torque. You could get a Z06 C5 Corvette, and yes, that has more power. Yes, that has better fuel economy. But what you lack is the steering feel of a mid-engine car with smaller tires in the front. Would I buy one if I had $15,000? $18,000? All in? I'd consider it. And in fact, I have. Guys, driving this thing has made me look on Facebook Marketplace for potentially replacing Project Jesus Fish, and I'm not happy about it, but this car is that good. It is that good. And the moment John fixes this brake and gives this car AC, if it had a lighter clutch, it would be a really good machine. So guys, I implore you to step outside of the box when you're looking for cars in that 15-20K range, because something like this, I guarantee you, you may not have thought of it, but you should. And thank you guys for joining us today on the Money Shift YouTube channel. If you enjoy this, like and subscribe. Drive safe. We'll see you next week.